Welcome to today's show. We have an important guest from the recent World Developers Conference. He's a leading web development professional, and today we will answer some of your basic questions on web development now. So welcome to today's show. I'm your host, Sam, and my guest today is Professor Mooney. Thanks for joining the show.
Thank you.
All right, so let's get this started. So could you tell us, our guests, what web development is?
Web development has changed a lot over the recent years. We started out basically just building things that a person would look at through a browser that was out on the web, but we've actually grown that quite a bit more because of the explosion of mobile devices. So we do a lot more with planning to move things to a phone or a tablet. And so web development has grown considerably.
Okay, well, why did you get into web development?
It was interesting. I came in a very unusual route. I was doing research in domestic violence and wanted to collect data, and the web was a brand new thing, and it looked like a very promising place to collect data. And I thought, well, I need to figure out this web thing. So I took a class at Purdue when I was a doctoral student, and had a lot more fun doing web development than I did doing the work I was doing with domestic violence. And just over that summer, left that PhD program and moved into a different one, and that led me to here.
And here you are now. Mm-hmm. So what do you think is the most flexible type of code?
The most flexible type is probably the latest version of HTML, which is HTML5.
Okay.
It allows us to do a lot more than we used to be able to do.
Like what?
We have a lot more interactivity just built right into the code, and that gives us far more flexibility to elicit responses from users, organize our pages, and just make everything work a little bit better across lots of devices.
So of all those things, what is your favorite part of HTML5?
HTML5 for me, the best part from the developer side that I work on is all the form features. It gives us so much so many better ways of error checking. A person doesn't give us the right information on the form, and it'll catch it before it even goes to the server. And it'll alert them visually very easily without having to have a lot of coding on my part. So that makes my life a lot easier, and it makes sure we get good information from the users.
Okay, that's cool. So what do you find the most appealing about CSS, and what is CSS?
Well, CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets, and the way they work is that we take all of the presentation, everything that makes the website look pretty or a web page look nice, is actually controlled in CSS. So we have so much more flexibility now with what we can do in Cascading Style Sheets from what we used to be able to do in just HTML. So all your colors, your fonts, your page layout, your alignment, all of that is controlled in Cascading Styles. And it just gives us so much control over how a page is going to look on a browser in a computer screen versus how it's going to look going to a printer, how it would look on an iPhone or an Android or an iPad. Even sending things to a Braille printer, we can change the way the page is laid out. So all of that is done with Cascading Styles.
Okay, I did not know that. Well, where do you think the next big thing with HTML5 and CSS is going to be?
It really is going to focus on more user interactivity and more flexibility for mobile devices. That's the key with everything right now is figuring out how do we take all this great content that we're used to seeing on a computer and put it on an iPhone or an Android, some small device, to give us a lot more flexibility. And that's the next big step with HTML5 and Cascading Styles.
Okay, cool. Well, I see that you brought along a laptop.
I did. It's a MacBook, and they're a great little tool. I've been very, very, very happy with these.
Nice. What software do you recommend that web developers would use with a Mac computer?
Well, the basics for web development on a Mac or even on a PC is you're going to need a good text editor. On the Mac, we tend to use Text Wrangler. It's a really popular one. A good graphics editor. So maybe Adobe Fireworks or even some of the free or shareware things. And then a bunch of different browsers, because every browser is going to display things a little differently. And so you want to look at your site in lots of different browsers to make sure it's going to appear as close to what you want as possible.
What's your favorite browser?
My favorite browser is typically Google Chrome
or
Opera, but Google Chrome is very fast and very powerful.
I've never heard of Opera before.
Yeah, it's not well used, but it's very, very, very powerful.
I might have to look that up after this. All right, well, what is your favorite program to use in the design of your websites?
When I do development, I use Adobe Dreamweaver almost exclusively. It provides me a great text editor built in, but then also very visual development side of things and great interaction with databases and things like that. So Dreamweaver is kind of the industry standard for web development, and it's what most all of us are using these days.
All right. Well, what makes that program most appealing as a web developer?
For me, it's kind of all the good parts of all the different tools that are out there. Text editing, it's phenomenal. Color codes and gives hints as we're writing in the text so we can more easily find an error. All of a sudden the color changes and it's all one color. We know we missed a semicolon or something somewhere in the code, and it's much easier to find that. And then it writes really clean code. It doesn't throw a bunch of junk in there that a lot of the other development tools will do.
Okay, that's cool. What do you think is the biggest hurdle for beginning web developers?
When people first get into web development, the transition from what we're used to, which would be Microsoft Word or PowerPoint, those kinds of things, to web development really revolves around the idea of kind of file management. Okay. In Microsoft Word or PowerPoint, if you want to put a picture in your document, you insert the picture in there, you save the document, and it's in there. And on the web, it doesn't work that way. You want a picture to display on a web page, that picture has to be saved somewhere in your site, and then you write a link to that. You reference where it is, and it always has to be in that same spot relative to where your page is. And that's a really conceptual thing that a lot of people struggle with to understand. It's a big hurdle when you first start out, but then it just becomes second nature.
It seems pretty confusing to me.
It is when you first start, and then it just stops being confusing.
All right, well, it looks like we are out of time, but thanks for joining us here on Web Development Today. Tune in next time for another interview with a leading professional in web development. I'm your host, Sam, and see you next time on Web Development Now.